Shalom, 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 shalom. First and foremost, giving infinite praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Wachakodash. Giving double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom and salutation to all you sincere Akims across the four winds, pushing this truth with sincerity of heart. I'm your fellow servant, Kasama God from a DC camp, coming at you through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Hakodash, to feed the elect out of the nation of Israel. This is another edition of the Watchtower. All right, as usual at the Watchtower, what we do in the spirit, when I say what we, because it's a multitude of men, the prophets of the nation of Israel being who? The so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, the true descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right. And in this season, the season of salvation, death, and destruction, the prophets, although we warning everybody, right, ultimately, who we truly warning are the elect. All right. The 1/3 spoken of in Revelation, the 7th chapter, beginning with the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe and men, and then the remaining of men, women, and children that are slated to be delivered, when the virgin daughter of Babylon, aka the United States, and other places get basically taken out in this upcoming Third World War. All right, and that's exactly what I'm about to get into, the progression towards the Third World War. All right, whether you believe it or not, the Third World War is on its way, and it's a lot of movements happening geopolitically. All right, and I know there's a microwave attention when it comes to this generation, but when it comes to the word of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua and the importance of the word, we try to be as detailed as possible, especially when things are really serious, because this is a matter of life and death, and the majority of people are not going to live to see on the post World War III. All right, majority of people are going to be taken out. They're going to die, according to the Bible. So, now, first, let's go straight to Revelation 11 and 14. And it says, the second woe is past, all right, meaning World War II is past. And behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And behold, World War III is coming quickly. All right, so let's go first to this particular article, that I want to bring forth, and it's from America's Quarterly, all right, .org, and it says the pink tide. It says Latin America's second pink tide looks very different from the first. All right, so I had to do a little bit of research because I didn't know what the pink tide was, so it took reading, then that's how you got to do it. The scripture said, blessed is he that readeth, and the issue with you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, you don't want to put in the time, but you're going to have to, because it's just that important. So right here it says Sao Paulo, which is, I believe that's Portugal, but Sao Paulo, it could be Portugal. It says Gustavo Petro's upcoming inauguration on August 7th as Colombia's first left-wing president confirms an unmistakable trend in Latin American politics. So, all right, so we're talking about Colombia. It says, only 5 years after right-leaning leaders occupy presidential places in much of the region, including Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, leftist candidates have won the vast majority of national elections and now govern all of the region's major countries, except Brazil, where former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva holds a comfortable lead less than 2 days ahead of the presidential election. This new pink tide appears even more dominant than its predecessors, so like a predecessor in the 2000s that brought the power leaders like Argentina's Cristina Kirchner, Bolivia's Evo Morales, and Venezuela's Hugo Chavez. However, comparing the two cohorts reveals more differences than similarities. All right. And I'm going to explain basically what's going on is that you have nations, you have countries in South America that for a good majority of the time in the late 90s and early 2000s, their leaders were basically pro-America. They were pro-United States. But then something has happened in the last 10 years where the people are electing leaders, or so-called electing leaders, that tend to be anti-America when it comes to the way they see the world. All right, geopolitically, economically, socially. All right, they disagree with the American hegemony, and they tend, and now they starting to ally themselves with nations such as Russia and Iran and China, right? Which those nations are on the opposite end of the United States and NATO. All right. So that's what's called the pink tide. Now, this is the second pink tide. So let's go to the first one, because I had to read to figure out, well, what is this pink tide that they're talking about? It says the pink tide. All right. It says on the turn to the left, it says was a political wave and perception of a turn towards left-wing governments in Latin American democracy, moving away from the neoliberal economic model at the start of the 21st century. As a term, both phrases are used in contemporary 21st century political analysis in the news media and elsewhere to refer to a move towards more economic progressive or social progressive policies in Latin America. Such governments have been referred to as left of center, left-leaning, and radical social democratic. All right. So it says the Latin American countries viewed as part of this ideological trend have been referred to as pink tide. And that's what you see on the map right there. That's the pink tide, right? And it says with the term post-neoliberalism or socialism of the 21st century being used to describe the movement as well. Some pink tide governments, such as those of Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela, have been varyingly characterized as being anti-American. So you have these three nations that are basically characterized as anti-American, anti-Babylon, right? Because America is Babylon in the scriptures, as well as populist, for their rejection of the Washington consensus, and as authoritarian, particularly in the case of Nicaragua and Venezuela by the 2010s. All right, so a little over 10 years ago, things have shifting. So these are nations in South America, because remember, the United States had a huge control over the majority of nations in South America. All right. And of course, the Latins, those are the Israelites. All right. Those are the different northern tribes. All right. You're talking about from Puerto Rican and Argentina, Chile. You got the 12 tribe chart. Those are our people. All right. So, but the majority of those nations now are starting to lean towards more of a, mindset of making deals outside of America. They don't want to deal with America on no level. And this is very important, because if you're going to have a world war, you have to have allies. And then you can't lose allies that you had control over for almost like over 100 years. And now all of a sudden your allies, especially next door allies, because we're talking about South America, and more than half of those nations are anti-American. They're anti-Babylon. All right. That means if they're anti-Babylon, that means they're pro what? That means they're pro Gog and Magog, Russia, and they're pro Kurd, which is China. All right. So now let's go back to the set. Now, when you go back to this article, it talks about the second pink tide. So it says, I'm going to go to this paragraph right here when it says, this new pink tide appears even more dominant than its predecessor in the 2000s that brought to power leaders like Argentina's Cristina Kirchner, Bolivia's Evo Morales, and Venezuela's Hugo Chavez. However, comparing the two cohorts reveals more differences than similarities. First, Latin American leaders in the mid-2000s enjoyed a commodity boom, and by the end of the decade, a significant U.S. interest rate reduction, which created an ideal microeconomic environment for the region. These leaders were popular thanks to their increased public spending and generally won re-election and succeeded in picking their successors. Right, that's when America had hegemony over the majority of South America. All right, so by contrast, today's leaders face a perfect storm of rising U.S. interest rates, geopolitical instability, and limited fiscal space after a devastating pandemic that hit Latin America particularly hard. And that's what happened in 2019, 2010. All right, a majority of our brothers out there in South America from the different tribes, they got hit really hard. Their economy wasn't really that strong to begin with. And when things had to be shut down, a lot of these nations basically, struggled really, really hard. It wasn't put on the news here in the United States because, of course, if you are in the United States, this is the center of the matrix. So you're not allowed as a United States citizen to know and to be aware and to know what's going on in the world. That's how the government is able to basically do whatever the hell they want to, because they have to make sure that the citizens are totally unaware of what's going on outside of the United States, outside of Babylon. So, but it was a big time struggle going on. And then, they understood, once they figured out the reason and the cause for the pandemic, they understood the culprits, right? They understood what was going on, who was behind all of it. And now they're making their decisions, and they decided that, hey, you know what? We're going to move a different way. And this is critical because all these nations, they have riches, they have resources like fuel. You can't go to war. If you want to go to war, you're going to need fuel. All right. And you don't want to constantly travel above seas to get fuel, especially a war like a Third World War. So it would be great to have nations that are allies right here in your backyard, and they have fuel, they have oil, and you can use that and use them in their military might to fight your enemies. But what's happening with Babylon now is that their allies in their backyard, South America, are turning around and said, nah, we ain't gonna rock with you. We rocking with the Russians. We rocking with the Chinese. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on. All right. And like I said, this is geopolitics. This is geopolitical and military like type moves is taking place. And again, it's not for everybody. It should be, because the reality is the majority of people that are unaware of what's going on, they just gotta try to scramble around and figure out what's going on when the bombs drop. If you're trying to figure out what's going on, who's doing what, and this and this and that, when the bombs are dropping and you're in a concentration camp somewhere, now you're trying to scramble and cram all of this, man, you're too late, man. All right? You got to know these things before they happen. That's the purpose of prophecy, to say before. And the prophets of the Lord have been given this gift to tell you what's going to happen before it happens. So when the Third World War kicks in, you're not going to wander around, right, in this matrix, lost like 90% of the people that's just going to be scrambling around, not knowing what the hell is going on. All right. It says, by contrast, today's leaders face a perfect, when I read that, I'm going to read it again. It says, by contrast, today's leaders face a perfect storm of rising U.S. interest rates, geopolitical instability, and limited fiscal space after a devastating pandemic that hit Latin America particularly hard. They must be the bearers of bad news and thus generally suffer low approval ratings, given that the dominant political sentiment is Latin America in Latin America today is and will likely remain anti-incumbent, the second pink tide will most likely be much shorter lived than the first. In Argentina and Peru, for example, today's leaders look particularly vulnerable. Right. I mean, this is just an opinion. That is an opinion as far as like it's going to be short lived. It's only going to be short lived because the Third World War is right around the corner. All right. And the person who wrote this piece is definitely they're being more optimistic. That's the issue. That's the reason why you got to hear this truth from the men of the Lord, because we're going to give you the scoop according to the Bible. We're not going to give you some information to bring some facts and then bring our own optimistic opinion of how things are going to get better, because things are not going to get better. So when we read these pieces, we can tell when, the journalist is putting his own emotions in the article instead of just saying things for what they are. All right. Because the main reason why these Latin American nations are turning is because they got hit really hard with the pandemic. They did their research and find out who was behind it, what happened and everything. So now they've decided to ally themselves with who they believe, right, are going to be the winners of the Third World War. Unfortunately, those are our brothers, but they lost. The majority of them in South America are gone. And they're going to be judged. They're going to be caught up in this Third World War. That's just the reality of it. So now let's go to Obadiah 1 and 5. Well, actually, Obadiah, the book of Obadiah, 1 and 6. It says, "How are the things of Esau searched out? How are the hidden things sorted up?" All right, it's just like Esau making a secret council for the Third World War, beginning with the elites, the Rothschilds, the Rockefeller. They're the one moving all these chess pieces behind closed doors. They're moving all these chess pieces because those leaders that are quote unquote anti-Babylonian, anti-America from South America, all of them are Freemasons. So if you're a Mason, whether you work for, one hand of the elites or the other hand of the elites, you still work for the elites. You still work for the Rothschilds. Just like in World War II, like I stated, when the Rothschilds funded Hitler. And then in the same token, they funded Churchill, Winston Churchill of Great Britain, to fight against each other and kill each other. So, they funded France. I always talk about World War II. The history they don't tell us is that Charles de Gaulle let Hitler work through Paris because he was paid to fall back. He was paid to stand down. That's not what we were taught in school. We were taught that France was just getting their ass kicked. That wasn't true. France was paid to stand down. So, listen. You understand, man, the lies that Esau perpetrated over the years, man, it's all coming to light now, man. And that's all thanks to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. He's the one who's giving us this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, man. Obadiah 1 and 7, it says, "All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, and there is none understanding in him." So let's get a better, I ain't going to say a better, more understanding for the ones of us that wasn't born and raised in the Old English. This is the NIV, Obadiah 1 and 7. It says, "All your allies," which the majority of South America used to be allies to North America, right? It says, "All your allies will force you to the border," meaning force you to the edge. When you're getting forced to the edge, that means you're being kicked out, basically. You're being removed, all right, from the congregation, from the league. It says, "All your allies will force you to the border. Your friends will deceive and overpower you. Those who eat your bread will set a trap for you, but you will not detect it." All right. The reality is everybody who's aligned, who has been aligned with Babylon, the United States, who is allied to Babylon, the United States, they all have ulterior motives. The scripture said the beast shall hit the whore. That would be the ultimate treason that the United States is going to receive, according to the Bible, is when NATO is going to turn around with the European Union and actually shoot missiles right along with, Russia and China shoot missiles to take this place out. But prior to that, you already seen the deception right now. You already seen South America who ate your bread, meaning dealt with you and got into your democracy and so on and so forth. They believed in your democracy, and then then you hit them with a you hit them with a pandemic, basically. You know what I'm saying? So they're like, hold up, man, like we suffering and dying, and it's all you. You know what I'm saying? So they're gonna turn around and be like, nah, man, you know, we gonna rock with somebody else. All right. So now let's go to the latest nation to basically turn. All right. And this is all Reuters. China and Nicaragua reestablished ties and blow to U.S. and Taiwan. And this is big because China is getting ready to invade Taiwan, which, again, that's going to happen. Just like it was always slated for Russia to invade Ukraine to a certain extent. Those are plans that these two nations had set up for years. That's why they made sure to get all their resources, because they knew it was going to be heavy sanctions from the West when they made those moves. That's why China and Russia took over 10 years to make sure that they had enough resources to withstand sanctions from the West when they made these moves that they're making right now. So these things just don't happen. You know, you wake up in the morning, oh, this nation invaded. No. It takes time. This takes years. All right. It's calculated moves. It's chess pieces, man. You're dealing with the elites of the planet Earth. They don't move like you regular normies here, man. That's why the nation of Israel, you know, we can't move like regular normies, man. We have to be awakened. We have to be aware, and we have to engage into the spirit, into this warfare. But our engagement as Israelites is spiritual. We have to spiritually place ourselves in the best possible place in this war that's coming. And how do you do that? Is by you know, coming back to your nationality, believing in Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua, you know what I'm saying, and pushing this truth. That's how you put yourself in the best possible place, you know, when it comes to this run to the end, basically. All right. So it says Beijing, Taipei, December 10th. It says China and Nicaragua reestablished diplomatic ties on Friday after the Central American country broke relations with Chinese claimed Taiwan, boosting Beijing in a part of the world long considered the United States' backyard and angering Washington. China has increased military and political pressure on Taiwan to accept its sovereignty claim, drawing anger from the democratically ruled island, which has repeatedly said it would not be bullied and has the right to international participation. So you see what's going on now. They're like, man, we're not going to get bullied. You know, because you're a big dog. You used to be the big dog, but you got these big contenders. You got Russia, you got China. You know, these are big contenders, and all these nations are hedging their bets. They're hedging their bets on Gog and Magog. You know, in the scriptures known as, you know, that's Russia, and Ker of Moab, which are the Chinese. All right, so these are alliances that are taking place, you know, while the majority of our people out here twerking. You know, you dumb Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans out here twerking, acting stupid. Our women just flooding, you know, TikToks, you know, with dumbass videos, right? While all the nations are jockeying for position in this upcoming Third World War, you know, to take over the planet. But Israel, the people whom actually the inheritance of the planet belong to, we out here bullshitting like little kids. But the elect are growing up. The elect are growing up and becoming men and understanding that, hey, this is serious. These are serious times, man. All right. Our leader, Yahushua, is waiting for the men to get their act together, man. So he can, so this army can be built up spiritually, you know, so we can, you know, we can, you know, win this war. All right. So let's go to Revelation 16:12. It says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. So what's going on now? The kings of the east is what? You got the far east, which is China. And then you have the upper east, which is what? The northern eastern is who? Is Russia. Those are the kings, the top kings of the east, man. They're preparing their ways. And the sixth angel is really talking about a sixth season, because we are in between the sixth season and the seventh season. The seventh season, that's the seventh candlestick. That's when Yahushua shows up. But prior to that, it's going to be a major, it's going to be a major war. a third world war. And that's going to happen in between the 6th season and the 7th season, which we are approaching that time. That's why these moves are being made. That's why the kings of the East are moving and making sure their allies are ready to take on Babylon, right? And who? And NATO and the rest of the EU and their allies. All right. So now let's go to, then it takes us to Ezekiel 38, right? Verse 2, it says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog in the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against them. All right, so Ezekiel was given the burden to prophesy, the Third World War in details, given names and nations that's going to take place in the Third World War. Gog and Magog being Russia, as we know, right? It says, and say, thus saith the Lord, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. All right, armies. And then eventually it's really, because you're going to have boots on the ground on the Third World War. And the Third World War, as we know, is going to take place in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, known as the Arabian Peninsula. That's where the Third World War is going to take place. It's going to be boots on the ground, but it's going to quickly escalate to a high level of technological warfare with missiles and lasers, all kinds of craziness is going to take place. All right. And then eventually it's going to go to the highest level, which nukes are going to be shot off. All right. So now let's go to verse 38. Ezekiel 38 and 5. Ezekiel 38 and 5, it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmets. All right. Now, when it says, I want to focus on Ethiopia. When it says Ethiopia and Libya, Ethiopia and Libya, well, the reason why I almost skipped because I almost skipped Russia. This is some news that also came out as well. There's some activity going on, and Russia is basically secured another ally, man. It's Central African Republic. All right. It says Russia has become, and this is out of Crisis Group, Russia's influence in the Central African Republic. Russia has become the Central African Republic's preferred ally in its battle with insurgents, but the government's use of Russian mercenaries as it goes on the offensive is causing domestic divisions and alienating other external partners. Concern about rights abuse and misinformation campaign are mounting. Russia has rapidly expanded its influence in Central African Republic in the last few years, using military support to become President Faustin Archange Touadéra closest ally. Prone to coup, rebellions, and communal strife, CAR has been engulfed in conflict for over 20 years, while the government wields authority in the capital, Bangui. It is largely absent from the provinces, where an array of rebels and other armed groups exercise their own form of predatory rule. Disappointed by the inability of the UN peacekeepers to extend the state's right, Touadéra turned to Russia in 2017. And the peacekeepers is what? It's talking about the UN, which goes back to NATO. So Central Africa at the time, they used to hedge their bets on that coalition of the United States, the EU, NATO, right? But now they're hedging their bets on Russia. They flip. And that's all in the scriptures. It says securing weapons and military instructors to bolster CR's shambolic army after the UN Security Council approved an exemption to the arms embargo on the country. Today, Russian advisors have the government's ear in not just military, but also political and economic matters. Now, when you go to the ancient map, when it says Libya and Ethiopia, I always bring this out. You have to go to the ancient map. The ancient map, Ethiopia is right here. As you can see, it's that whole Central Africa. It was once upon a time. I think this is a 1662. This is the map of Africa, 1662. So it was called, the Ethiopia was not just one country. It was a whole peninsula, right? Whole middle of Africa. And then Libya was known as the whole northern Africa. That whole northern Africa was called Libya. So these, and then you see the correlation. You see these nations are turning and they're choosing their allies, right? It's according to Bible prophecy. Ezekiel 38 and 5, Persia, which is Iran. and primarily Iran, because you also have Pakistan and all these other Stan nations. It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. Ethiopia and Libya is Central Africa and Northern Africa. With them, all of them with shield and helmets. That's the reason why Russia is down there. All right, so you see how things are moving. Now let's deal with the Chinese, right? Because with the Chinese, it's talking about Kerr of Moab. You know, just to give my understanding, I brought this up before. It says this is the judgment on Moab, or Isaiah 15:1. It says the burden of Moab, because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence, because in the night Kerr of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. So we know the Moabites are the Chinese. So to prove that even more, right, you go to Ezekiel 22:6. It says in Elam, which Elam are the Persians, bear the quiver with chariots of men and horsemen, and Kerr, remember Kerr of Moab, uncovered the shield. Like I said before, you got to look up the word Kerr. When you look up the word Kerr, what comes up is Kerr means wall. All right, place in Mesopotamia means wall. It says wall Kerr means wall of Moab. Basically, the wall of China. That's why you have this thing called the Great Wall of China, because it's all spiritually linked like that. Kerr of Moab is talking about the Chinese. So when you see Kerr, it's talking about the Chinese. And it says Kerr in Elam, the Persians. That coalition happened in the past. It's happening again. So China has always been very influential in the history of humanity, as far as like wars, fighting against Israel and against other nations and so on and so forth. All right, so just want to bring that out, just to add on to it. But I'm going to conclude with this. This is Luke 21:36. It says, watch ye therefore and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. So we got to continue to watch, man. I mean, this is some big moves happening. And like I said, when it comes to geopolitics, it ain't for everybody. I mean, I try to make it as short as possible through the spirit, but certain things you just kind of have to go into details. As long as, you know, the elect understand the magnitude of what we're going into, and it's going to pay off. All this knowledge and knowing these things is going to pay off, because the incredible amount of propaganda that Babylon, aka the United States, and and NATO and the EU, when World War III starts, no news media is going to accurately tell you. No Western media is going to accurately tell you what's taking place in the world. It's going to be nothing but lies and propaganda, and you're going to be fully persuaded in the matrix that you know you're dealing with the right side and all this other garbage. But the men of the Lord will know exactly what the hell's going on. And, you know, and that's the reason why we do what we do. We prophesy, we stay at the watchtower, man. So with that, I'm going to say, Kal Halam Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shah Ba'Shem HaKodash. Give a double honors to our apostles, elders of great millstone. Shalom, salutation. To you say occupants across the four winds, pushing this truth with steady of heart. Stay strong, stay watchful. Yahweh Ba'Shem Shabakatam Ba'Shem HaKodash. Shalom.